Scanning for audio.
Welcome to a slightly croaky For Your Consideration. This time we'll be talking about Chariots of Fire, which is Luke's choice. However, before we do that, I'm sure we've got something else we need to say first.
Yes, well, this is the first time that we have convened since the death of Siobhan Galishon last year. We did mention it in the intro last time, but Michael and I haven't talked since then. And she was a big part of Doctor Who podcasting, and we thought we couldn't not do a brief tribute before we dive into this time's episode. I was thinking, would you remember when you first met Siobhan?
I think it was on stage at Hooverville, but before that, it was that whole thing, like you'd said, where you can kind of track down all the Doctor Who podcasts and possibly listen to them when there's only a handful of them out there.
Yeah.
And Staggering Stories was out there. This was before Siobhan had gone off to become the Flashing Blade and all that business. And then, I mean, I don't like to dead name people, but at that point we knew Siobhan as Tony.
Yes.
And they were just an absolute pillar of fandom. They were just like this beacon, and everyone just went to them for advice, for enthusiasm, and for humour. And it was brilliant. And if ever you had any worries, or not worries, but like you were going, oh, do you think we should do this? The answer was always yes. But
yes, it
was, so yeah, that was how I met Tony at that point.
Yeah.
And all the Staggering Stories and everybody else. And that was it. So that was my first physical meeting, but I'd been listening to the Staggering Stories before that. And they've just kind of always been there.
Yeah, I mean, I think I must have started listening to Staggering Stories after Siobhan left. And it probably, you're right, it probably was that Hooverville where a lot of us came together, and there was that sense of, you know, this was our community. You know, it wasn't just we were Doctor Who fans, we were Doctor Who podcasters. And Siobhan was at the forefront of that. And then I did Doctor Who Mastermind, for which Siobhan is still, and possibly will remain at the top of the leaderboard, because I've not done any more.
Well, can I just say I've never done that, and even if I did, Siobhan would still beat me. I'd be sat there going, hang on, mate, I know this one. So yeah, that's really not a crown I'll be fighting for.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, I still want to get Chris from Radio Fuscaro. I mean, they mentioned it on their podcast a few weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
In relation to Siobhan's passing. And I was, oh, yes, Chris is always supposed to be the next guest. Maybe.
So a massive, massive hole in fandom and podcasting?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes.
Now,
yes.
I went back and I listened to the last recorded Flashing Blade, because you can get them all on YouTube. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, Siobhan's always going to be there.
Yes.
If ever you need a fix of Siobhan, just Google, they're there. Right, and she'll do a chat and she'll talk and it'll be great. But in that episode, she plans out the next year's worth of podcasting.
Wow.
It's like, oh yeah, we'll be doing the Christmas special, and then we'll move on to this, and I'm just sat there listening to it going, oh man, it's just a huge haul. I just hope that she had an inkling of how important she was and how much she's missed.
I hope so. I do hope so.
I'm not convinced, but I do hope so.
I think she would have been surprised by the scale of
about the outpouring. Yeah, you're right.
But I hope she knew how much she meant to all of us in podcasting. And you know, I rewatched the quiz that we did for Staggering Stories, me against her. With our insane levels of nerdery. And, you know, we often talked about doing a rematch, and that's never going to happen now.
Well, not this lifetime, no.
Not in this, I mean, in the next world, we can fight over the golden knob knacker. But yes, I mean, I plan to be at the funeral, which will be later. Well, you'll be hearing this in February, so it'll be later this month from when our episode goes out. And so I hope many of us can be there to remember Siobhan, and hopefully there'll be a live stream of some kind, so that those who can't attend in person can be part of it. But yes, right. I don't really have. I've been trying to find the words, but I can't really find the words other than to say, as we've said.
I think Siobhan will be happy to leave people speechless.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I think that's the best way of approaching it. Okay, so we are here. You know what? Let's not let this interfere with podcasting, because that's basically what we're here for, and that is what she'd like. So,
yes,
you brought something for my consideration.
I did.
You brought something that I'd never seen.
Yes,
that I had, and I'll be honest with you, actively avoided. Chariots of Fire.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I always ask you this because you're bringing it, so I have to ask you.
Yeah.
Why? But also, and this is why I'm on very shaky ground here, this is down as your favourite movie.
Yes.
So I'm on really shaky ground here. So can you talk about that, please, and also save my voice?
Well, that's fine, and I'm quite prepared for it not to be something that you enjoy, because as I was reflecting on this, I realised that it's my favourite film for quite a number of very personal reasons, and although you and I have a lot in common, these are not those things.
Yeah, I kind of guessed that while I was watching that.
So I guess the first thing is I was a runner, and I grew up watching athletics. And lots of sport back in the early 90s, when the BBC still had the rights to most sports, and you could watch 5 days of cricket on BBC Two, for example, or you could watch not just the Olympics, but like all the different athletics tournaments. So I grew up watching Linford Christie and Chris Akabusi and Steve Cram, but people like that run.
See, these are names I actually know.
You know those,
which is surprising.
Those names, yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
Obviously, I know Steve Cram, but that's beside the point. Yeah.
Well, yes, and I was quick. I got to secondary school and I ran a very fast 100 metres, such that my form decided that I would run the 100 metres at the sports day. Whereupon I realised that although I was quick for my 8th of the year, I wasn't the quickest in the whole year. But I ran the 100, I ran the 200. I ran the races that the athletes in Chariots of Fire ran. I ended up going a lot further out. Did the sort of longer distances, 1500 and cross country and that kind of thing. So I was a runner. So it speaks to me on that level. And then obviously it's a film about two people who are grappling with their identity in terms of religious identity in the context of running. There's more to say about that, but that's obviously another big thing. I was thinking about, I don't know when I first saw it, but I know that I had seen it by the time I was about 9 or 10, because in year 5 we had a teacher exchange. So we sent one of our teachers to Canada, and we were the recipient of a teacher from Canada, specifically Edmonton in Canada. So there's the Radio Free Skaro link for you. And she was great. I loved her. Mrs. Isaacs was her name, and she wanted to show the film to us. Okay. And so she was like, "Has anybody got it on video?" And we had taped it, and I remember trying to tell the plot to somebody, and her telling me off because I was spoiling the plot.
What? So you taped it off the TV?
We taped off the TVs. So I know that I had seen it for the first time at some time before I was 9, 10ish, and then watched it at school. With my classmates.
Oh, hold on. So let's just sort this out. So last time we did, we mentioned, we basically worked out you were born in 84.
Yes.
So we're looking at 95.
We're looking at sort of 93, 94.
94, 90, okay. Oh, it's definitely going to have been on TV by then, because it was made in 81.
Yeah. Okay. So, so I know that I'd seen it a couple of times in childhood, and I mean, I guess I liked it enough then.
Yeah.
But then kind of forgot about it really, until I discovered it as a student in Sunderland, so probably second year of uni, I think, I suspect. Saw it on DVD and was like, oh, I remember that film from when I was a kid, and I bought it, popped it in, and 2 hours later I was emotionally wrecked. And it's been a go-to film for me ever since then. So for the last over 20 years, and I've had it on. So I had it on DVD, then I had it on special edition 2-disc DVD, and now I've got the Blu-ray because you've got to have it. And actually, we watched it on Disney Plus because that was easier than getting the Blu-ray.
That's how I ended up watching it. I ended up downloading it to my tablet and watching it that way because yeah.
And then the other personal connection is that the producer of the film was my chancellor.
Dodie fired?
No. He was the executive producer.
Okay, sorry, that was a whole surprising thing that I have got in my notes. But anyway, sorry.
No, yes, Dodie Fired was the producer. No, it was the executive producer, i.e. he put some money in.
He had the cash, yeah.
David Putnam was the producer of the film.
Yes.
And he was the first Chancellor of Sunderland University from 1997 to 2007.
He certainly was.
So I will explain this for our non-British listeners. Universities tend to have a vice-chancellor who is the person who runs the university from a day-to-day basis. And then they have a chancellor who is like a figurehead who turns up to kind of do a speech and give you your degree at the end of your degree. My brother had Peter Ustinov at Durham. I think he was one of the last people to have Peter Ustinov before he died.
You've no idea how hard it was not doing a Peter Ustinov after he died to gag that. Zombie Ustinov.
Zombie Ustinov.
Right. I'm so jealous because.
We got David Putnam. Who did you have a chancellor when you?
Well, so I went to Sunderland twice.
Yes.
And I did my HND, which is with 2/3 of a degree. Then afterwards, I did a whole extra degree rather than just doing the top up in filmmaking. So I've got my degree, my HND in 3D design and communication, which is what basically prop building and things like that, and design. And then I've got my degree in animation, but that's from Northumbria University, which is Newcastle Poly. And then I went back to Sunderland to do my MA. Now, I have no recollection whatsoever of any speeches from the MA. And here's the thing. The Chancellor at the time when I was at Sunderland is pre-Putnam, because Putnam wasn't available. It was Chancellor Flavia, which was the best Doctor Who reference I could come up with, because there was a Chancellor Flavia, and our Chancellor was Chancellor Flavia as well, and that's why I remember we had Chancellor Flavia. She
was the dean of the school when I was there.
There we go.
I forget what her surname was, but yes.
So that's why I remember, because I was like, oh.
Yeah.
So, we didn't get no Putnam.
And this was the year we graduated. The Empire Theatre in Sunderland was being refurbished, which was traditionally where Sunderland Uni.
That's where I get mine. Yeah, because that's where Sid James died. Yeah.
But it was undergoing a year or 2 year refurbishment. So Sunderland had to come up with a new idea. So they moved to the Stadium of Light, the football stadium.
Yeah.
So they basically built a platform over the bottom row of chairs, and then we were in the next row of seats, and our parents were in the row of seats behind. If you Google the University of Sunderland, the Wikipedia page has a picture of a graduation ceremony from Sunderland. Anyway, so I go up to collect my award, and obviously Lord Putnam hands me my degree, and he leans over and he says, "I like your tie."
Yeah.
So I'm just like, wow, okay, the producer of Chariots of Fire likes my tie. What a claim to fame. Anyway.
Hang on, what was the tie? Or was that like the punchline?
It was a North American Railroad from the old times tie that my parents had got me on a trip to Canada, I believe.
You see, I wore my 30th anniversary Doctor Who celebration tie when I graduated from Northumbria.
But anyway, I had been asked by my tutor, possibly because Flavia had been trying to find a somebody. So Flavia asked around, and my tutor said, well, Luke could do a good job. So I had to do the speech on behalf of the students in my...
Okay, that's very cool.
There were 6 graduation ceremonies in the week, and I got to be one of the 6 students who got to speak. And so I'd written this speech, which, to be fair, didn't go down. It didn't get much of a response. I thought it was quite witty, but I mean, what do I know? But I had to then ad lib at the start because I'd put in a thank you to David Putnam, and I said thank you for kind of all the ways that you publicised the university, and thank you for your very kind remarks about my tie. So,
yeah,
so that's one of my weirdest claims to fame is that the producer of Chariots of Fire liked my tie. Yeah.
Right. So basically, it's got an emotional impact with you early on. You've got some connections going on.
Yes.
And then later on, because of the whole teacher thing, you've got another layer of connection. So it basically embeds itself into your consciousness.
Yes.
And it had an emotional reaction. So when you're watching it again, it's attaching itself to the past, dragging that forward, and it's presenting yourself with a story that you can not just relate to, but it actually has an emotional effect. I get that.
Yeah. And then obviously this time...
I absolutely do get that.
Yeah, this time watching it with Hannah, I think because I said, have you watched it before with me? And apparently I have shown it to her before at some point in our relationship. I do not remember this, but we watched it together again this time. And again, watching stuff with my wife is special. And we had a good chat about, what actually happened, the lives of the guys beyond the film, because, I've read up about them.
I did a bit of research, but not...
and talking about how the two men are presented and how we related to that, so it's a good, and I'm going to bring this up now because, she was like, there aren't many women in it.
Well, you're not wrong.
So let's, but I guess it's a reflection of the time and place in which the film is set, because it's, it is based on true events.
Well, yeah, set in Cambridge. Yeah, but like, any women in here? Are there any women here? Nope. Right, yeah, and then you've got that, and then you've got, there's that. But to be fair, yeah. I get it.
What I'm intrigued, Michael, why have you said you'd not seen it, but you said you'd actually actively avoided seeing it. So when have chances to watch it presented themselves in the past, and why have you avoided
basically,
it?
On TV, in a DVD, in a video shop, not in a DVD shop, in a video shop, that kind of thing. Obviously, I was aware of it as part of culture, but as I showed myself up at the end of last time's episode, I just didn't know. I assumed it was like Roger Bannister. I'd seen the bit where they were running in the cloisters.
Right, yeah.
And because that gets shown a bit, because it's really well. It's right. Okay, put my hand up. It's tremendously well shot.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not going to argue with that. It looks great. And because it's done what English films do well on a limited budget, it shows you what's already there and just goes, look, doesn't it look lovely?
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh my God, that's breathtaking. Is that CGI? No, it's just Scotland.
Yes.
Oh my God, the architecture in that scene's fantastic. Is it Naboo? Nope, it's Cambridge.
Yeah.
It's like that. You're being presented with something that already looks spectacular.
Yes.
And all you do is it's playing to our strengths as a as a country. We make really good period drama. It's the Victoria Wood thing. If you want to make something that is classic, you set it in the past so it never truly ages. Now, obviously, there's the whole Vangelis music thing, which I'm sure we can discuss in a minute. See, I have actually got genuine opinions, but I've avoided it because basically I saw it as a sports film, which I have avoided traditionally because sports have no appeal to me. I cannot. Dodgeball, I enjoy Dodgeball as a film, but that's not really, that's the closest I can get to a sports movie. It just, I think it's become, hang on. So while I'm at Sunderland doing my MA, we're doing a section on documentary. And the guys, and there's a thing called, I think it's called Hoop Dreams, right? I really pissed off the lecturer at this point. And they get halfway through, and the guy's about to make this throw in Hoop Dreams, and if the basket goes in, he goes to college, he becomes the super megastar, his life is in front of him, and it's a dream. And if he misses, done.
Right.
Everything counts on this, and he stops the video, and he says, what happens next? He said, who thinks it goes in? And everybody's hand goes up, and mine doesn't. And he says, what? He zeroes in on me. I've got a very clear memory of this. And I said, he's going to miss. And I went, what do you mean? Have you seen this? I went, no, I would never have watched this on purpose. And he went, why? Why makes you think? I went, because it's real life. And in real life, people miss. People don't achieve their dreams. People don't become best. People don't develop and become incredible things. They try really hard and then they fail. And it's America, where everyone's got big houses and big lives and they can just be whatever they want, and it's all about the American dream. But in reality, they fail. And if this is real, this documentary is showing me, he'll probably miss, because 99% of people just fail. The guy turned around, presses play, and he misses. Right? And everyone looks at me like, you've seen this before. And I really, genuinely hadn't, because I don't care. But that's the difference, you see. This is a film about... It's a film about the British doing well at sport, which is why it had to happen 100 years ago, because we're not very good on a world stage, where we can be great, we can be brilliant. Right? Certain people can be, but it's that it's that Mitchell and Webb thing, when it goes, oh, did you see the match of the day? We did really well. You didn't. The team you supported did well. You know, it's like Indiana Jones beats the Nazis. Well, we beat the Nazis on that one. No, it's the thing you were watching went well. And I know everyone loves sport because it's got that element of chaos and you don't know what the outcome is. But that's why I like narrative, and that's why I like stories, and that's why I do it. Because I'm like, yeah, it's a story. It's made up. Everything's going to end well.
Yeah.
Because it's made up, and I know that, and I've bought into that, and perhaps it's just the way my brain is wired. And also, I had really terrible memories of sport at school. I was standing round waiting for time to pass. But, you know, it was like, oh, we're doing football. Do you mean I'm standing in the cold? Yep. Oh, we're doing running. You mean I'm plodding behind everybody else waiting to die so that my asthma will kick in? It's like, what's the point of any of this? I don't want to be... No. We were doing teams at school. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm telling this story out loud. Okay. Middle school. We do teams. We're all lined up. We go through this person, that person. There's about 40 of us. The last person standing to be chosen for a team is me. And the person choosing points at the piece of orange peel on the ground and says, can I have the piece of orange peel instead? At which point I said,
Michael.
Look. And I said to the PE teacher, look, they don't want me here. I don't want to be here. I could quite easily just go in and read, and I'd be a much better person, and they would be happy. Can I just go in now? And he looked at me like PE teachers often do. Oh my God, too much information. Ah! And then he just got us to join the team, and then I stood there and waited for time to pass, as I have done repeatedly through my life. So sport does not appeal to me in any way at all, apart from archery and shooting. That's a whole different kettle of fish and a whole different conversation with the time. But those I liked. But everything else I have issues with. Oh, and swimming. I liked swimming. I still do.
I am so sorry that happened to you.
No, it's fine. I don't care. And it gave me 2 killer stories. It's not a problem. I
mean, I can relate on the level of not getting picked for the football team, because I was terrible at football.
Well, I can't kick for toffee. I still flinch at the sound of a football being kicked because I know it's heading for my head. Right? We've all been there, and I know that 200% of our listeners will probably be able to relate to that. They've flinched at that point, but that's not important. So, sport, not for me. Films about sport don't really appeal because I've only got a finite amount of time and there's other stuff to watch. So that's basically it. And also, and this was where I was really coming from, was I saw it from the outside, and it wasn't anything to do with religious struggles or identity or anything like that, because you have to be actually in the movie to witness that. It was posh boys running, and I was like, oh, brilliant, class war, something else I'm not up for either. It was like, yay, people who are like, oh look, it's a one gender thing, it's universities, it's people running, it's things that irritate me in the core of like, oh look, yes, we're the privileged type, and then what's he called? Gielgud and the bloke who directed If. They're having these conversations about how they're just superior to everyone else, and you know, and it's like, and then the anti-Semitic comments, and then there's all the other stuff, and you're like, yeah, because you're all scumbags who think you're better than everyone else, and if you met me, you'd think you were better than me because of the way the British society is, and it just makes me. And I know it was written by a working class bloke.
Yes.
And I know that's what he's getting at. And trust me, he managed it to really poke the buttons that he was trying to poke in.
Yes.
And he managed it. But I think I'd avoided the film for those reasons.
Yes.
So that's it.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. No, I can see that. And I mean, it is I think if you're not British, there are probably whole aspects of it that completely pass you by. You know, the Scottish thing, you know, with the Prince of Wales, like, oh, good to have you on our side now, and like you say, the hypocrisy of the two Dons played by Gielgud.
Not just that. When I've forgotten his name. Anyway, but there's also like when Havers turns up and says, "I'm going to run against it as well," and then he starts saying all of the names of the prep schools he went to, so everybody starts cheering him, and I'm just like, "Oh, Nigel, normally I like you, and I've met you in real life, and you are a nice bloke, but this is really irritating me." Because as far as I'm
okay, did the film help? Did it win you over in terms of his character? Because he's
Nigel Havers,
he's thoroughly nice.
Yes,
as a character, he just happens to be, you know, upper crust.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he will. How he did step up, but there was the caveat of I've already won my medal. If he hadn't already have won his medal, would he have done that?
Well, I mean, he doesn't exist in real life.
Oh. That'll be why then. So a nice person, the main nice character in the film, not real.
So the guy that he's based on didn't want to be in the film.
Okay.
And so he did do the whole... he had his own set of hurdles at home. He didn't use champagne glasses, he used matchboxes.
Right.
So, you know, that level of posh was real. The big thing that the film does is that it ups the ante by having Liddell not discover about the Sunday heats until he's getting on the boat.
Got you.
In reality, he knew about it months in advance. So
okay,
so they kind of twisted things for dramatic purposes. So the whole kind of decision to let him run the 400 instead of the 100 happened a few months before they got on the boat to France.
So they've compressed time and events just in order to make
There's a lot of reordering of things.
Okay.
To kind of up the dramatic ante. Like Abrahams didn't meet his wife until 10 years later. So the whole... And they misidentified this particular Sybil that he married. So he did marry an opera singer called Sybil, but it wasn't that Sybil. And they didn't meet until 10 years later. So there's a whole bunch of kind of playing with...
That's an actress I actually recognised as well. I was proud.
She was one of the ones I wanted to just look after.
Yeah.
So there wasn't the case of like I think that whole conversation probably did happen, you know, where the Prince of Wales and the committee tried to persuade him. Like, he was under an immense amount of pressure to cave and run on the Sunday. Yeah. But that all happened in England beforehand, and there wasn't a case of Lindsay's character kind of going, well, I've won a medal, you know, you can have my slot. Yeah, that was all decided before they went to France. So the film plays with that to up the dramatic ante, and I'm okay with that, you know.
No, I am as well, because it actually was a really nice bit of filmmaking.
Yeah. So, yeah, should we talk about which of the two guys do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about Abrahams or Liddell first?
Well, the story introduces Abrahams first, so let's do Abrahams.
Let's do, yeah. And this is one of those things where you're just like, and Hannah pointed this out to me afterwards. She was like, "This is pre-Nazis." And this is Britain.
Well, yeah, so now somebody else does shout, do it for Israel, and Israel doesn't exist till 47.
Well, I guess Israel had historically existed thousands of years before.
Historically,
so, you know,
but then it was...
And the Zionist movement did exist at this
Specifically
at this
today, let's not go down that road.
But this is just the life of a Jewish immigrant, well, a British-born Jew, born to Jewish immigrants.
Post-dispersion, yeah.
You know, and just the anti-Semitism that he faces in his life, and the reason that he's running is because, you know, he wants to prove that he is better than everybody else, you know, and to go, you know, I'm gonna take you all on at your own game.
He is, and it's referred back to throughout the plot. But the one thing that he absolutely fixates on is the Gilbert and Sullivan aspect. Yes. And you don't get much more, specifically for the time, much more British than that.
Yes.
Than being a fan of, you know, I won't even... Normally, I would break into some of the songs, but I won't.
And that is true. That bit is genuinely true. That is part of his character in real life. Yeah. They kind of took that from the real Abrahams and made that part of the film.
Yeah, and that is... It's a very middle class. It's a very upper middle class. It's it's accessible.
Yeah.
It's all of those things. I get it. Yeah, and there's a reason that Gilbert and Sullivan have never gone away.
Yeah.
Because they're very well made, they're very well constructed, and so on. Was it the same production company and same writer who did that other one later on, the one with Timothy Spall?
Which one with Timothy Spall?
The one about Gilbert and Sullivan.
I don't know. I'm not aware. I don't know.
It might be the same writer. Anyway, that's not important.
Be.
What is important is that, so you've got this character who is defined by everyone else.
Yes.
By his, we'll use the word race.
Yes.
Because, because that, let's face it, we're with David Baddiel. That's fine. You know, have you seen that documentary, The Jews Don't Count one?
I have followed him enough on Twitter to kind of know
if you can track
the
it
gist.
down.
Yeah.
Well, it's got Neil Gaiman in it, so you might want to watch it before it gets taken down and changed into something else. But the actual documentary itself is incredibly good, so it's well worth watching for that.
Yeah.
Let's use the word race on that one.
Well, and I suppose the other thing is that there's no, in the film at least, there is no obvious religious observation. You know, they even do the whole like pork trotters, and he doesn't seem to mind.
No, he just laughs.
So he is, as far as we can tell, a non-observant Jew. So this is all about his ethnicity. You know, it's all about the fact that he's not, he's not one of us. You know, and that's a reason to mark him out. And
well, that's standard behaviour, especially for the time. And we're only talking, 10 years before Hitler's fully operational.
Yes.
So, and the Nuremberg laws will be quite kicking in Germany quite soon. So it's of its time. There is definitely going to be,
and then and then you have the Prince of Wales, you know, famously Nazi sympathiser, the Prince of Wales.
Didn't really look a lot like him in the film, but I get it now because he wasn't played by one of the Foxes.
Yeah.
As so often happens later on, but yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
So yeah. And I guess that drive is the thing, and his relationship with Sam Mussabini is.
Oh my God! Right. Whoa. Right. Okay. So Sam, obviously played by Ian Holm. Right.
Yes.
Okay. The Hobbit, the bloke from Alien, one of the greatest actors of his generation.
Yes.
He's never done a bad performance in his life.
No.
However, what accent is he doing? Because I heard Italian, I heard Scottish, I heard Yorkshire, I even heard Geordie for 3 lines, and I was going, what? Right. I like Ian Holm. I've got a lot of time for him, but by far this was the oddest selection of accents I've ever heard him do.
I mean, he's an Englishman of Italian and Arab background.
So obviously he's going to have a bit of Welsh accent.
So he's got.
I
don't know. I mean, I don't know where.
I apologise to
that from.
anyone who's. But Ian Holmes, I don't understand why he doesn't attend the thing. I could not grasp that in the narrative.
Because he was a professional, so he wasn't allowed because the Olympics wasn't.
Is he not allowed to attend and watch in the stadium though?
That wasn't.
I mean, it's a brilliantly shot scene, and it's really clever because you don't have to film the crowd, you don't have to do the cheering, you don't have to get 1,000 extras. What you've got is Ian Holm in a room and some sound coming through a window and him punching a hat.
Yes.
It's a lot cheaper and it looks really impressive, so I get why they might have done that. Because you don't realise that till afterwards.
Yeah, I think the implication is that because he was a professional, he wasn't allowed to go. But as a spectator, I don't know whether
that's
that was a
another
possibility.
really annoying thing, that the talented amateur thing. But it's only talented amateurs who've been to posh schools or who have connections. I mean, all right, admittedly, the other guy is like a rugby player. Yeah. And I get that. And then he's done running as well, and that's how he ends up here. But obviously he's desperately trying to... So, right. Is there anything else you need to say about... Abrahams.
About Abrahams. No, I mean, I just think it's a brilliant performance from Ben Cross. You know,
it is.
He's just in the zone as the guy, this guy who is totally focused on his running, and you know, you feel for him. You feel for the people who his obsession is hurting, and then ultimately that resolves at the end of the film, and you're like, yes, it's okay. He's won the race, and thank goodness. In reality, he broke his leg a year or two later whilst doing the long jump, and that was the end of his career. So
he was still a driven sportsman at that point. He didn't just call it a day.
No, he didn't just call it a day. And then obviously, as it said in the caption at the end, he became... I mean, my dad remembers him on the radio. My dad remembers hearing him commentate. So he became a broadcaster and, an advocate for athletics. He is one of the reasons why athletics is at the place that it is now 100 years later, because he had the drive to kind of publicise it and
I did not
keep
know
it in
that.
public consciousness. I remember watching when I watched it as a kid. My dad was like, "Yeah, no, I remember listening to Harold Abrahams on the radio as a kid because he would commentate."
So you've got a guy who's let's use the faith as a through line for this. You've got a guy who's defined by everybody else by his faith first, and they just go, "Oh, chap there is Jewish, yes, all that business, right?"
Yeah.
But then you've got the guy who defines himself by his faith.
By his faith, yes.
I was definitely getting the feeling that he might have been doing it for his sister and his sister's approval almost as much as his faith.
So
like his sister would have disapproved in the movie. I don't know about real life, but in the movie he did come across as being, he would upset his sister the most if he did run on a Sunday.
So in real life, she was very much on board. So the whole rift between them is manufactured for the sake of the drama. But no, I think his motivation for not running on the Sunday is what he says it is, and it is what it was. That his belief, his understanding of Christian faith was that the Sabbath, as far as Christians go, the Sunday was sacred, and that you shouldn't play sport on a Sunday. And it's interesting because that was still a thing for my parents. We didn't watch sport if it was on a Sunday when I was growing up. But I think his story is so much bigger than that. And my experience of Christians in narrative is that either they're homicidal murderers in detective shows. If there's a reason for a character to be a Christian, you're like, oh, well, there's a suspicion there, and it might turn out that they're the murderer, right? That's a common trope. Or they're more of the kind of sort of wet, weedy vicar type,
well, like Rev kind of thing.
Yes, and so this portrayal and performance is one of the few things that I just relate to completely, because it's one of the few times where I've seen my faith depicted on screen.
Okay.
I understand entirely where he's coming from. And obviously I work for a mission organisation now. So the fact that he was dedicated to be a missionary above being a runner, I totally get that. And I totally get the fact that for that season in his life, he was like, well, this is what God has given me to do, right? He's made me fast when I run, and the bit at the beginning where his dad's like, you can praise the Lord by peeling a spud if you peel it to perfection. This idea that like whatever you do it for God, whether that is washing the dishes or whether that is running in the Olympic Games. Like they are both activities that you can do with your life pointed towards God. So that's partly why I love the film so much, because what I see reflects my own experience of faith and being a Christian in Britain. And you don't really see it in many other places. I can't think of many other places where I have seen my faith and my experience of church reflected on screen. And I'm not saying that all those other things aren't true.
No, but they're often used. You're right. They're often used. I mean, even things like where, off the top of my head, Footloose. The whole town is dominated by Christian I don't only use the word fundamentalist, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The driving force is the main preacher who has the town in his thrall.
Yeah.
But a lot of that's more to do with his guilt, which comes out towards the end. But that would be it. So it's obviously, you see, it has to be something to be worthy of mentioning in a narrative. It has to be something that affects the narrative.
Yes.
So in Footloose, it's an important thing because it affects everything. It's the main reason that the music's banned and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But so I can completely see your point. That's not a problem. And you do get the shorthand religious nutter, and a rabbit ears for that. So yeah, I can see that, and I can see that would be another reason why it would speak to you completely. That's really, and I'm not going to argue with any of that.
And,
I mean, it's not my cup of tea, but that's like
no, that's fine.
That's fairly well logged elsewhere.
Yeah, and I mean, we have a limited amount of time. I could go on about him for for ages, and I would say to people listening to this podcast, do read about his life, because this film is
I was about to discuss the end bit of his life.
I was going to say, this film is a tiny moment of his life. So I encourage people to read up on both of them. Read up on both, because they're both fascinating people. But yes, you might have been about to go here. But we talked in the Christmas Carol about Tiny Tim dying and me crying, and I said, well, we're going to do a film where I cry. So was that where you were going to?
No, I was actually going to. It was. Sorry, the Scottish guy.
Liddell.
When Liddell's actual death in real life.
Yes.
Because I did a quick Wikipedia, because in the film it just says in Japan or something, but he's actually being transported to a prisoner of war camp when a brain hemorrhage kills him, I believe.
He had a brain tumour.
Brain tumour.
He had a brain tumour.
Actually, yeah.
And he basically stayed. His wife and daughters. Well, his pregnant wife, and his two older daughters were evacuated out before the Japanese occupied that bit of China where he was, and he stayed on. He relieved his brother. So the older brother that you see in the film, he was out there as well. He relieved him at the station. He was at the missionary station he was at, and then they were basically all interred in this Japanese labour camp, and that's where he died of a brain tumour. So he probably would have died anyway, but that, I think, hastened his end.
Not a brilliant way to go. No.
No. His final words were, "It's complete surrender," is what his final words are reported as i.e. he had surrendered his life to God. And, i.e. the bit at the end of the film, the bit where he's watching Abraham's run, and his coach says to him, "Any regrets, Eric?" And he says, "Yes, but no doubts, though." And I think that sums him up. That he would have potentially had regrets about how he had done things because of the pressure of the world around him saying, "No, you should do things differently." But ultimately, he had no doubts about his faith, which I think kind of speaks powerfully. But yes, the moment that broke me when I was 18, 19, was the moment where he and his sister reconcile. And there's no words. It's all done through the shot choices and the editing and the music. He's being held aloft by his fellow athletes, and he looks up into the crowd and he sees his coach, and his coach points him to move, and the camera pans over and you see the sister and the brother, and they're weeping, and I just lost it. I was in absolute floods of tears, because it is such a powerful moment of reconciliation. And depending on what mood I'm in, depending on each subsequent viewing of the film, depends on how much I get emotional at that moment in the film. I was a little bit weepy last night, but I didn't get into the full kind of like buckets,
No.
Okay. And then the next day, I was at church.
Oh yeah.
And when I was a student, I went to a Pentecostal church. So very, very into what is the Holy Spirit doing. Very into people speaking from the floor. And the pastor was like, has anybody got anything to bring? And I said, well, I think I have, actually. So it didn't happen to me very often, but very occasionally I felt like I had something to bring. So I just went up the front and I just explained what happened to me the night before. I said, look, I was watching Chariots of Fire, and for those that don't know, and explained the context of the moment and said, look, there's this kind of moment of reconciliation. And the worship leader, who was a friend of mine, this was a very small church, and he was related somehow to the pastor, and he just said, no, it was the other way around. It was the pastor, that was it. The pastor said to the worship leader, I've been holding a grudge against you. And right there and then, they kind of had this moment of reconciliation because I had brought this moment from the film that I felt God wanted to kind of bring. And they were I guess he was convicted by the fact that, Christians should reconcile with each other when they are in conflict. And he just immediately was like, confess this to this guy, and they had it out there and then. So that's obviously a very specific reaction to a very specific moment in the film that I don't expect anybody else to share. But I share that by way of saying how significant and important it is to me because that happened.
No, that's important.
You can make of it what you will, but that was it. Yeah. You wanted to talk about Vangelis.
Well, I just thought it was worth mentioning because, okay, a couple of things. I must admit, it did take me a few attempts to get through to the film. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
And there was one race, and I went, oh, right, so narratively speaking, there's a race, and I went, oh, hang on, there's two of them. There's got to be another race in a minute.
Yeah.
Right, but the races are really they're interestingly shot.
Yes.
Because there's not that much actual race. They concentrate on that slow running business at the beginning a lot more, and they're raced around the quad and they're practicing.
Yeah.
But the actual race in the Olympics, I know there's only like 10.5 seconds or something.
Yeah.
But if it was shot now, that would be it. It would be in slow motion. There'd be all sorts of extra stuff, and it's not.
No.
And that's a lot of really brave filmmaking.
It's really well edited. It's really well edited.
It genuinely is, yeah.
Yeah.
Not even I was like going, yeah, it was good. There was some great shot choices there. It really was. But like I said about the aging thing, the one thing, for me, Vangelis is Blade Runner, right?
Right.
And I've seen Blade Runner 2 billion times. I've seen I've seen the director's cut, I've seen the original, I've gone back to the original, and then I've tried to compare them. I've done all of that nonsense, right? And then I had a dream once that I'd watched Blade Runner, and the next day I got a phone call saying that my grandmother had died. And I was so frightened of that coming true that I never watched Blade Runner for about 9 years.
Wow.
And even once she died, I've only watched it twice, right? Because that was such a vivid thing. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I watched Blade Runner loads, but Vangelis music, I've got it on my phone, I've got it everywhere. Yeah. And that CD album track, whatever, I had it on tape, I don't think I had vinyl, but I had it on CD, I played it to death. So that's the Vangelis I know. And I know this, I know the main theme from this, because it's everywhere. It's part of the culture. But it is weirdly electronic, and it is weirdly of its time of 1981, and I know it works, but it shouldn't.
No.
And I don't think if it was being made now, even if they made it shot for shot the same, they wouldn't be brave enough to use Vangelis. I don't think there's a filmmaker brave enough to do that these days.
You're right, it shouldn't work. Particularly off the back of Star Wars having repopularized the symphonic score.
3 years earlier?
Yeah, the obvious thing to do would have been, let's get a composer in to write an orchestral score for it. And they go, no, we're going to use Gilbert and Sullivan. Yeah. We're going to use choir boys. And then we're going to get Vangelis to write the incidental music. And in fact, they weren't even going to get him to write a theme. They picked one of his pieces of music, and they said, "We really like this piece of music. We're going to use it as a theme." And Vangelis was like, "No, I'm going to write you a theme." And he picked David Putnam up in his Rolls Royce or whatever he had, with his 8-track stereo.
Right.
And he said, listen to this, and played them the Chariots of Fire theme, and they went, oh yeah, you're right, we're going to use this thing that you've actually written for the film.
Why can't we make movies like that anymore?
I don't know. And I of people, I don't often get sad about the passing of famous people, but Ennio Morricone and Vangelis, who have passed away in the last decade, I can't remember. Last few years, both of those two have passed away, and I've been very affected by that. And immediately be like, I need to play some of their music. And I've been listening to a lot of Vangelis in the last year or so, because I love his music. And that was another. We used to have a cassette of his music that we played in the car on holidays. So there were certain tracks, a lot of his stuff that wasn't film related. Just the music that he wrote. Yeah. And the Radiophonic Workshop, you listen to some of Vangelis' stuff, and then you listen to 1980s Doctor Who scores, and you're like, they were all listening to him, because he was the master, and they were kind of borrowing from his stuff. So it just works. I've tried with Blade Runner. I've tried, and I just thoroughly dislike it.
Right, so that's one thing that's on my to-bring list that I will not be bringing, okay?
No, please bring it, because I'd be happy to discuss it again, and I'd be happy to revisit it one more time. But I've tried a couple of times, and
I've not even seen Blade Runner, the new one. I've made it 6 minutes.
The 2049 one. Okay,
I've made it 6 minutes in and gone, I'll get round to it eventually. I can't. So, right, before we finish off, we always do the actors that we've seen and stuff. Yeah. All I saw was Ian Holm from Alien and Alice Cringe, Bold Queen was there. And on the titles, it said Ruby Wax. And I messaged you, and you went, no, she's like in a crowd scene or something, and that's it. But that was it.
The reason she's in the credits is because she shouts Charlie. The name of one of the American actors, American runners. She shouts his name.
I think it's the same year that she's in the film Shock Treatment.
Quite possibly.
She's possibly also got a line.
But she's literally in one shot. She's literally in one shot, but because she has a line, she's in the credits.
Okay.
So let's. So yeah. See, but did you spot any Doctor Who?
No.
Connected. Sorry. Okay. So we'll do these very quickly. So, in order of minor to more. And there was two that I didn't know about. David John, who plays the younger brother, and I don't even know whether the younger brother actually had any lines, but he was in that kind of scene where they're eating and they pass the potatoes, and he's doing his speech. He was Derek in Survival.
Okay.
But I don't actually know whether he actually spoke in Chariots of Fire. You then have Peter Sellier, who is the head waiter.
Yes.
Did you recognised him?
I recognised him, but I couldn't tell you which episode of Doctor Who he's in. But I was sat there going, "Oh, I know him. I know him from somewhere."
You know him. You know him from Yes Minister.
Yes, I do.
He's one of the civil servants in Yes Minister.
Yes.
He's absolutely brilliant. He's in episode 1 of Time Flight, which is probably why you've forgotten him. He's one of
I remember him from Yes Minister.
He's one of the people at Gatwick. No, not Gatwick. No, is it Gatwick? No, it's Heathrow. Gatwick is the Faces ones. He's one of the people at Heathrow. And then Struan Roger, who was the coach.
Okay.
So you the Sandy McGrath, the coach. So he is the voice of the face of Bo.
But surely that's John. What's his face?
John Barrowman. He appears as himself as a character called Clayton in The Woman Who Lived.
The woman.
That was the Peter Capaldi's second series. Yeah. The one with the lion man. I think he's probably a servant or something. And then he is also the voice of the Kasavin in Spyfall. Those kind of the shimmery light things that we thought might be the Vardens.
Yes. Oh, also, sorry, Nigel Havers marries Sarah Jane Smith in Sarah Jane Smith and
yes.
Veg. Yeah.
Now, the other person...
I know that was one of the obvious ones, sorry.
You've already got... I said look out for a character from Alien. I knew you'd get him, Ian Holm as Ash. Did you spot the other Star Trek actor?
No.
So you got that Alice Krieger was the Bald Queen.
Yeah, but that's because I've met her. Yeah.
Ben Cross was Sarek in the J.J. Abrams Star Trek.
Right, well, for those of you not watching this video, which is everyone because it's only audio, that was the expression of an idiot on my own face there.
You remember now?
Yeah. Feel a bit stupid now.
Now, I looked down the cast list.
Uh-huh.
There is a character called Leonard Mullin. I do not know at what point he appears in Chariots of Fire, but he is credited to Peter Jones, voice of the book from Hitchhikers.
No.
If you can tell me where he appeared in the film, I
couldn't even see Branagh and Fry.
Ah, well, so Fry...
And I know where they're supposed to be.
Yes.
They're supposed to be singing.
Well, no, so Branagh is in the Freshers' Fair.
Yeah.
And I don't think it looks enough like Branagh for me to be certain that it is, but everybody says that it is. And Stephen Fry is in the back of 2 shots of the Gilbert and Sullivan bit where Harold is kind of singing at the front. And he's very obviously him. If you pause it, you're like, oh yeah, of course it's him.
Right.
Due to somebody putting all Big Finish on IMDb, I can tell you that also Nicholas Farrell, who was Aubrey Montague, Nigel Havers, who was Lindsay, Alice Creasure, who was Sybil, Peter Regan, who was the Duke of Sutherland, David Yelland, who was the Prince of Wales, and David John, who we've already mentioned, have all done Big Finish. But I think Nicholas Farrell, you feel that Nicholas Farrell should have done a Doctor Who by now, but they never have got him to do one. Obviously Nigel Havers got to do Sarah Jane, but again, you're like, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
I
do like that antiques thing he does, but if you ever see the long shots, he's definitely a man of a certain age wearing definite trainers for his arch support. Yeah, I met Nigel Havers once when he was in Rebecca. He was awfully nice.
So he broke his ankle in the lead up to this film, and he was so worried about losing the role that he didn't get it treated properly.
Right, so that'll be it. So he's an idiot.
He's an idiot
who's managed to find work his entire life.
They had to go into intense training for months before the film so they could actually run properly.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's on the documentary on one of the DVDs and stuff. Yeah, there's a couple of other things I really wanted to talk about. We've run out of time, so maybe we can talk. They're more general things about film ratings because there's a really interesting story about Chariots of Fire and film ratings, and the fact there's an American version that has a different scene in it. But we haven't really got time to talk about that.
No, thank you for getting me to watch something I have actively avoided. It wasn't my cup of tea, but I do not regret doing it at all, and I'm very glad. That's what this podcast is all about.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So it's Blade Runner. No, it's not. My choice for next time, which is my birthday month.
Yes.
It was going to be something black and white and very old. But then my wife suggested something the other day that we haven't watched for ages, and I went, oh my God, I so need to do that. So I've totally redone my list, and we are doing Galaxy Quest.
Oh, yes. I was
going to say, now I was going to give you the option of, if you hate this, we will just not do it. But
I have seen it once, and I very much enjoyed it. It was in my Love Film days, so I probably saw it 15 years ago, but I remember enjoying it hilariously.
Right, so Galaxy Quest it is for my birthday month.
Yeah, fantastic. Cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, so thank you, Michael. I'm glad to have been able to kind of bring that. I hope listeners have thoughts. Tim Jury got in touch to say that there's a scene in Paris which is definitely Cambridge, and I didn't figure it out, so we're going to have to get back to him and say, tell us which scene of Paris was actually shot in Cambridge.
Yeah.
But
we are getting a lot more feedback than we ever used to. I'm really pleased.
We sort of asked for feedback, and a few people have given us some
stuff.
Well,
feel free. Bring it.
So
comment.
Do bring it, yeah. But yes, I will say my farewells and leave the end, as usual, to Michael.
Be seeing you. That was the Tin Dog Podcast. Everything discussed is the intellectual property of others. No infringement is intended. For early access to reviews, follow the show on YouTube or Twitter @TinDogPodcast. To contact the show, email tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk. The Tin Dog Podcast is a founder member of the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance.